We were talking about our kids, teenagers, we would live in our worst fear about them, them getting hurt or doing stupid things that could put them in jeopardy. And so we're in our parent reality with good intention, living in our worst fears, and they're in their little realities having a good time. And we, and that's the setup. When we were working with the engineers in this corporation, as we talked about this on the job, they started asking, but Cathy, what about my kid? I have a son and he has no ambition and he doesn't want to do anything, and and I asked the room, I said, how many dads do we have in the room who are going through this? And half the room raised their hand. And I said, so what is your worst fear about your kid? And they all kind of looked at me. I said, no, really, what is your worst fear that you're right now about your kid? And they still weren't. I said, well, how many of you are worried that they're going to live with you till you're 90 years old? And they go, And I said, well, let's go further. How many of you are afraid they're going to end up out on the street, living under the bridge, shooting up heroin? And they go, and for no reason. They just had all this worry about their kids. And I said, so you're walking around with all this worst fear thinking, with good intention, and can you see when that's coming at your kid, how is that going to play out? And they're like, yeah, I guess that's probably not a cool thing. But see, it was so invisible to them that they were creating that in them and that their kids were getting the brunt of that. And I said, yeah, so you're not going to be able to get that connection to ask to come out of yours and say, honey, so what's up? So I got to learn this with my son. He graduated from college, and he's still living with me, comes home, and the plan was he was going to get a job. And so I used to be in the field of helping people get jobs, so I'm like, here's all these resources, and I gave him all this stuff. 3 weeks later, nothing's happening. He's just hanging out at home, playing video games and playing his music. So I'm like, oh man, this is not looking good. And I even gave him connections to probably get a guaranteed job, and nothing's happening. So finally, the fourth week, he's laying on the couch and he's watching TV. I come home and I'm like, helping the world with this understanding. And I come home and I want to kill my son. Like, I want to call his dad up. He's staying with you now. So finally, I just kind of settled down, and I looked at him, I said, Aaron, what's up? Why aren't you looking for a job? He said, well, Mom, this is a big deal. And I said, what do you mean it's a big deal? He said, well, in high school, they told us that whatever your first job is, that's going to determine your career. That's what he heard. I want Jesuit school. I wanted to kill the Jesuits. But my Jewish son going to a Jesuit school, and that's a whole other story. But anyway, yeah, and I looked at him, I said, really? Well, no wonder he's freaking out. Like, it was such a big deal for him, he became immobilized. And I looked at him, I said, Aaron, actually, that's not true. And I shared with him, my first job, and I said, it really, right now, it doesn't matter what the job is. It's just getting the whole experience of working that's what this is all about. And, eventually you'll get to where you want to be, but it's okay if you don't pick your lifelong ambition, the job. And he looked at me, you could see the relief. You could just see the relief. Now, had I not come out of my reality and come out of Cathy to get curious about, well, what is his reality? What is his logic? What is he making of this? I would have been, I would have hit phase 5 and been screaming at him, or saying, no, you got to live with, whatever. But we innocently, we think we should know, we think we have the answers, we think we should fix it, when actually that was such a great conversation. I haven't thought about that in years. It was amazing. So again, now I assume separate realities all the time, even when I'm reacting to people, even when I think they're out to lunch. Even with Trump, I thought if I had to sit with him, I would have to go into my knowing about this. Seriously, because he has his reality and I have mine. And see, when people don't understand that, then it's everybody's right or wrong. So we're innocently just, doing this all the time. So that to me is huge.